This is just a sample of the training available at itdvds.com. To see complete training, please go to itdvds.com. Let's begin the sample. The goal of a failover cluster is to keep an application up and running, and we do this by eliminating single points of failure. So we're creating some redundancy so that if we have a failure anywhere in our cluster, the application stays up and running. And with Windows Server 2012 R2, we have some nice features built into the operating system that allow us to use cheaper hardware in order to do that. So this is a cluster we're actually going to build, and we're going to use teaming and multipath I/O to eliminate even more of those single points of failure. So our iSCSI SAN doesn't have a single network connection. We're going to use teaming. We're going to use multipath I/O to create some redundancy in our connections to our SAN. So with this, since it's all built into the operating system, Windows Server 2012 R2, we can use generally cheaper hardware. In teaming, we could go a step further here, add another switch. We can still use the teaming because there's an independent switch mode on our teaming so that we can team across multiple switches and again eliminate these single points of failure. So before, we had to normally buy pretty expensive hardware that had either built-in redundancy or software that came with it that allowed us to create some redundancy. But now we can create most of it. The one place we still want to be real careful though is our storage. We might be tempted to use a cheaper server for some storage or something like that and create our cluster, and it'll give us the feeling of, wow, we've really got some redundancy here. But the storage itself, if that isn't fully redundant, then we still have a very serious single point of failure. Because if our storage goes down, then our whole cluster goes down. It doesn't matter how redundant we are in other areas. So with more expensive storage, they normally have multiple, at least 2 storage processors. And those storage processors are basically independent servers that run and control the storage. So it's almost like we have a failover cluster within our storage. With cheaper hardware, we generally can't create that. So if this is Windows Server 2012 R2 we're running, if that operating system on that server blue screens or something like that, then our whole storage array is down. It doesn't matter if we've used storage spaces and striped our virtual disk across multiple arrays. The bottom line is if this is a single server for our storage, then we have a single point of failure. So we just want to be careful about that. Know that that's a possibility, and if this is mission critical, we want to get some more expensive storage that has some built-in redundancy. Now, one thing we can do with something like storage spaces is create a cluster, like a scale-out file server cluster, where we cluster across multiple SAS arrays, and then we can stripe the data, the virtual disk, across the 2 SAS arrays. So then we're getting some redundancy with our storage. Generally, that's a bit cheaper than a more expensive SAN, but we add some complexity there, and buying multiple SAS arrays and ones that are certified by Microsoft can still get kind of expensive.